She had nothing left but the cold, and a stranger's hand reaching through the dark. Alina Hayes never imagined her life would end on a Chicago sidewalk at 27, cast out like trash by the man who promised to love her. Starving, broken, invisible. But when a powerful figure emerged from the shadows offering salvation, she had no idea that one desperate choice would pull her into a world of secrets, danger, and 3 broken children who needed her as much as she needed them. This is her story. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this journey reaches. The wind off Lake Michigan cut through fabric and skin like a blade made of pure winter. Alina Hayes pressed herself tighter against the brick wall of the closed pawn shop, her thin coat doing nothing, absolutely nothing, to keep the February cold from devouring her alive. Her fingers had stopped hurting an hour ago. Now they were just numb, curled around the only thing she had left in this world. Her mother's silver ring still warm from being clutched against her chest. 27 years old. And this is how it ends, she thought distantly. The thought didn't even scare her anymore. Fear required energy, and she had none left. 3 days. That's how long it had been since Marcus threw her out. 3 days since he'd screamed that she was worthless, broken, defective, all because her body wouldn't give him the air he demanded. 3 days since she'd walked out of that house with nothing but the clothes on her back and the ring she'd hidden from him for 2 years. The streets of Chicago's South Side didn't care about her story. The few people who passed this late didn't even look at her. She was invisible now, just another shadow among shadows, another casualty of a city that ate people whole and spit out the bones. Her stomach had stopped growling yesterday. Now it was just a constant, hollow ache that reminded her she was still alive, even though she wasn't sure she wanted to be. The pawn shop window behind her displayed watches, jewelry, guitars, all the things people sold when they were desperate. She'd stood in front of 3 different pawn shops today, ring in hand, ready to trade her last connection to her mother for enough money to eat. But each time she'd walked away. It was stupid, she knew, sentimental and stupid and probably going to kill her. But it was all she had left of the woman who'd actually loved her. A car passed, its headlights washing over her briefly before moving on. Alina closed her eyes. Maybe if she just went to sleep, the cold would take her quietly. People froze to death in Chicago every winter. She'd just be another statistic, another Jane Doe, another person who slipped through the cracks. At least it would stop hurting. You planning to die there, or are you just enjoying the view? The voice came out of nowhere, deep and smooth and completely incongruous with the frozen hellscape she was sitting in. Alina's eyes snapped open. A man stood 5 feet away, hands in the pockets of an expensive black overcoat that probably cost more than Marcus made in 6 months. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair and darker eyes that seemed to see straight through her. Mid-30s, maybe, with the kind of face that belonged in boardrooms or on magazine covers, not on a South Side street at 11 o'clock at night. Behind him, a black SUV idled at the curb, engine running, windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. "I'm fine," Alina heard herself say, which was possibly the stupidest lie she'd ever told. She was very clearly not fine. She was hypothermic, starving, and homeless. The man's expression didn't change. "You're turning blue." "I said I'm fine." Liar. The word hung in the air between them. Not cruel, just factual. Like he was stating something obvious, which it was. He took a step closer, and Alina tensed. 2 years with Marcus had taught her to read danger in the way men moved. But this man, there was danger there, yes, but not the kind she knew. This was something else, something controlled and deliberate and far more frightening because it didn't announce itself. "When's the last time you ate?" he asked. Alina's jaw tightened. "Why do you care?" "I don't." He said it without malice, just another statement of fact. "But you're going to die if you stay out here, and despite what you might think right now, dying on a sidewalk is a particularly unpleasant way to go." "Maybe I want to die." "No, you don't." He tilted his head slightly, studying her. "If you wanted to die, you'd have done it already. You're sitting here suffering because some part of you is still fighting. The question is what happens next." Alina stared at him. Who the hell was this man? And why was he talking to her like he could see inside her head? "I have a proposition," he continued, as casually as if they were discussing the weather and not her imminent death. "You can stay here, freeze to death, and be forgotten by morning. Or you can get in the car. Every survival instinct Alina had left screamed at her that getting into a stranger's car was how women disappeared and ended up on the news. But then she was already disappearing, wasn't she? Already dying. What difference did it make how it happened? Why? She asked. Her voice sounded strange, distant. Why would you help me? Something flickered in the man's dark eyes. I'm not helping you. I'm offering you a choice. What you do with it is up to you. He turned and walked back toward the SUV. When he reached the door, he paused and looked back at her. 10 seconds. Then I'm gone, and you're on your own. Alina's mind raced. This was insane. He could be anyone. A trafficker, a killer, someone worse than Marcus. Getting in that car could be the last mistake she ever made. But staying here was a certainty. The cold would kill her. If not tonight, then tomorrow night. And no one would even notice she was gone. At least in the car, there was a chance. Maybe a terrible one. Maybe a mistake she'd regret. But a chance nonetheless. The man opened the car door. Alina stood up. Her legs almost gave out. They'd gone numb from sitting on frozen concrete for hours. But she caught herself against the wall. One step. Then another. Each movement felt like walking through quicksand, her body fighting against her even as her mind pushed her forward. She reached the car just as he was about to close the door. Their eyes met. His were unreadable, like staring into dark water and not knowing how deep it went. Smart choice, he said quietly. Alina wasn't sure about that, but she climbed into the car anyway. The interior was warm, blessedly, painfully warm. The heat hit her frozen skin like needles, and she had to bite back a gasp. Leather seats. Soft music playing from speakers she couldn't see. The smell of expensive cologne and something else. Coffee, maybe, or whiskey. The man slid in beside her and closed the door. Drive, he said to the driver, who Alina could barely see through the partition. The SUV pulled away from the curb smoothly, and just like that, the frozen sidewalk disappeared behind them. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Alina sat rigid in her seat, acutely aware of how terrible she must look, how badly she probably smelled, how out of place she was in this pristine vehicle. Her fingers still clutched her mother's ring so tightly it hurt. "What's your name?" the man asked. She almost didn't answer. Names had power, Marcus always said. Give someone your name, and you give them leverage. But what leverage could anyone have over someone who had nothing? Alina, she said finally. Alina Hayes. He nodded once, as if filing that information away. Victor Moretti. The name meant nothing to her, but the way he said it suggested it should. Like he was used to people recognizing it, reacting to it. "Where are we going?" Alina asked. "Somewhere warm, where you can eat and sleep without freezing to death." And then what? Victor turned to look at her fully for the first time. In the dim light of the car, she could see his face more clearly. Sharp cheekbones, a straight nose, a mouth that looked like it rarely smiled. But it was his eyes that held her. They were intelligent and assessing, but there was something else there too. Something that looked almost like recognition? No, that wasn't right. More like he saw something in her that he understood. "Then we'll see," he said. It wasn't an answer, but Alina supposed it was all she was going to get. She turned to look out the window as Chicago slid past. They were heading north, away from the south side, into neighborhoods she'd only seen in movies. The buildings got taller, cleaner. The streets got quieter. This was a different world, one she'd never belonged to. "Why did you stop?" she asked suddenly. "Why me?" Victor was quiet for so long she thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, quieter, almost tired. "Because I know what it looks like when someone's about to give up, and I know what it's like to lose everything." Alina looked at him sharply, but his expression was unreadable again. Whatever vulnerability she'd heard in his voice locked away behind walls she couldn't see. The SUV turned onto a tree-lined street where every house looked like a mansion. Alina's breath caught. Where the hell was he taking her? They pulled up to a gate, actual iron gates, like something out of a period drama, and the driver pressed something. The gate swung open silently, and they drove through. The house, no, estate, that came into view made Alina's stomach drop. It was massive. 3 stories of stone and glass, with wings extending on either side and lights blazing in half the windows. A fountain sat in the circular driveway, currently turned off for winter but clearly functional. Manicured gardens stretched into the darkness on both sides. This wasn't just wealth. This was power. "Where are we?" Alina whispered. "Home," Victor said simply. The car stopped at the front entrance and Victor got out. After a moment of hesitation, Alina followed. Her legs were steadier now, the warmth of the car having brought some feeling back, but she still felt like she was moving through a dream. The front door opened before they reached it, and a woman in her 50s appeared. She was dressed neatly in slacks and a sweater, her gray hair pulled back in a bun. Her eyes went immediately to Alina, widening slightly at her bedraggled appearance, but she said nothing. "Mrs. Chen," Victor said, "we have a guest. She needs food, clean clothes, and a room." Mrs. Chen nodded. "Of course, Mr. Moretti. I'll prepare everything immediately. And call Dr. Santos. I want her checked for frostbite and malnutrition." "I don't need a doctor," Alina said quickly. "Doctors cost money she didn't have." Victor glanced at her. "Yes, you do, and I'm paying, so don't argue." There was no room for debate in his tone. Alina's jaw clenched, but she nodded. They stepped inside, and Alina had to stop herself from gasping. The entryway alone was bigger than the entire apartment she'd shared with Marcus. Marble floors, a chandelier that probably cost more than a car, a curved staircase leading to the second floor, original artwork on the walls. "This way, dear," Mrs. Chen said gently, her voice kind despite the strangeness of the situation. Alina followed her, acutely aware of Victor's presence behind them as they climbed the stairs. The second floor was just as overwhelming. A long hallway with doors on either side, thick carpet that swallowed the sound of their footsteps, more art that looked like it belonged in museums. Mrs. Chen opened a door near the end of the hall. "Here we are." Alina stepped inside and felt her throat tighten. It was beautiful. A huge bed with a thick duvet, a sitting area with a couch and chairs, windows that probably had a view of the gardens, an attached bathroom she could see through an open door, complete with a bathtub that looked deep enough to swim in. "I'll bring up some clothes," Mrs. Chen said, "and I'll have soup ready in 20 minutes. Do you like chicken soup?" Alina could only nod, not trusting her voice. Mrs. Chen smiled and left, closing the door quietly behind her. Alina stood in the middle of the room, still clutching her mother's ring, not quite believing this was real. A few hours ago, she'd been dying on a sidewalk. Now she was in a mansion that looked like it belonged to royalty. None of this made sense. A knock on the door made her jump. "Come in," she called, her voice shaky. Victor stepped inside, carrying a glass of water. He set it on the nightstand. "The doctor will be here in an hour. Mrs. Chen will stay with you until then." "Why are you doing this?" Alina asked. The question burst out of her before she could stop it. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Why would you bring a homeless stranger into your home?" Victor studied her for a long moment. "Because everyone deserves a second chance," he said finally. "And because I can." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting tonight." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Get some rest, Alina. We'll talk in the morning." He left before she could respond. Alina sank onto the edge of the bed, her mind reeling. Every instinct told her this was wrong, that there had to be a catch, that men like Victor Moretti didn't save women like her out of the goodness of their hearts. But as she looked around the warm, safe room, as her body finally began to thaw and the immediate threat of death receded, she found she didn't care about the catch. Whatever Victor Moretti wanted, whatever this was, it had to be better than freezing to death in the dark. Didn't it? Mrs. Chen returned with clothes, soft pajamas that felt like heaven against Alina's raw skin, and a thick robe that wrapped around her like a hug. The soup came next, and Alina had to force herself to eat slowly, even though every cell in her body screamed for her to devour it. 3 days without food meant her stomach had shrunk, and Mrs. Chen gently warned her about eating too fast. The doctor arrived as promised, a kind woman in her 40s who examined Alina with professional efficiency and gentle concern. Mild frostbite on her fingers and toes, she said. Dehydration, malnutrition, nothing that wouldn't heal with warmth, food, and rest. But the doctor's eyes had lingered on the bruises Alina thought she'd hidden so well. the faded yellow ones on her arms, the greenish mark on her ribs, the too thin wrists that spoke of someone who'd been grabbed and held down. "If you need to talk," Dr. Santos said quietly as she packed up her medical bag, "about anything at all, I'm here. And I'm discreet." Alina had nodded but said nothing. What was there to say? That her husband had beaten her for 2 years? That she'd stayed because she had nowhere to go, no money, no family? That she'd actually believed him when he said it was her fault? The shame was almost worse than the cold had been. After everyone left, Alina finally allowed herself to take a bath. The hot water hurt at first, her frozen skin protesting the sudden warmth, but she endured it. Slowly, painfully, feeling returned to her fingers and toes. She washed her hair 3 times, scrubbing away days of dirt and despair. When she finally climbed out and looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Hollow-eyed, too thin, bruised, but alive. Still alive. She pulled on the pajamas and robe and climbed into the bed. The mattress was so soft it felt like floating. The sheets smelled like lavender. The duvet was warm and heavy and safe. Alina closed her eyes, expecting to fall asleep immediately. But her mind wouldn't quiet. Who was Victor Moretti? What did he want? And why did a man who lived in a mansion like this, who clearly had more money than most people saw in a lifetime, drive around the South Side at night looking for dying homeless women? None of it made sense. But as exhaustion finally pulled her under, Alina decided that sense didn't matter. Not tonight. Tonight she was warm and fed and safe. Tomorrow could bring whatever it wanted. Tonight she would just breathe. Alina woke to sunlight streaming through windows she didn't remember opening. For a moment she was disoriented. This wasn't Marcus's apartment, wasn't the shelter she'd tried to get into, wasn't the frozen sidewalk. Then memory crashed back. Victor Moretti. The car. This room. She sat up slowly, her body aching in new ways. The warmth and food and rest had helped, but 3 days on the street had taken their toll. Her muscles felt like they'd been beaten, and her head throbbed dully. A clock on the nightstand read 9:47 a.m. Alina couldn't remember the last time she'd slept past 7. Marcus always wanted breakfast at 7:30 sharp. A knock on the door made her tense. "Come in," she called. Mrs. Chen entered with a tray. "Good morning, dear. I brought you breakfast. How are you feeling?" "Better," Alina said, and it wasn't entirely a lie. "Thank you." Mrs. Chen set the tray on the bed. Scrambled eggs, toast, fruit, orange juice, coffee. Enough food for 2 people. "Mr. Moretti would like to see you when you're ready. No rush, though. Eat first." She left before Alina could ask any questions. Alina forced herself to eat slowly, even though the food was the best thing she'd tasted in years. Real butter on the toast, fresh fruit, coffee that didn't taste like it had been sitting in a pot for hours. When she finished, she found more clothes laid out in the bathroom. Jeans, a soft sweater, undergarments still in their packaging, socks. All in her size, or close enough. How had they known her size? Had they guessed? Or had Mrs. Chen somehow assessed her last night? Alina dressed quickly and looked at herself in the mirror again. Better than yesterday, at least. Still too thin, still bruised, but clean and warm and alive. She opened the door and found Mrs. Chen waiting in the hallway. "This way, dear," the older woman said kindly. They descended the grand staircase and turned down a different hallway. Mrs. Chen knocked on a heavy wooden door. "Come in," Victor's voice called. The room they entered was clearly an office. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk, leather chairs, windows overlooking the gardens. And Victor, standing by those windows, hands in his pockets, looking out at something Alina couldn't see. He turned when they entered. In daylight, he was even more striking than he'd been last night. Tall and lean, but clearly strong. Dark hair cut short. Those same unreadable eyes. He wore slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and somehow looked both relaxed and ready for violence. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen," he said. The housekeeper left, closing the door behind her. Alina stood awkwardly in the middle of the office, not sure what to do with her hands. "You wanted to see me?" "Sit," Victor said, gesturing to one of the chairs facing his desk. Alina sat. Victor moved to his own chair, settling behind the desk with the ease of someone who was used to being in control. "How are you feeling?" he asked. Fine, Alina paused. Better. Thank you for everything. Victor nodded once. We need to talk about what happens next. Here it comes, Alina thought. The catch, the price. Nothing in life was free, especially not rescue from a freezing sidewalk by a wealthy stranger. Okay, she said quietly. I have 3 children, Victor said, which was not at all what Alina expected. Isabella is 13, Marco is 10, and Sophia is 5. Their mother died 2 years ago. Alina's breath caught. Whatever she'd been expecting, it wasn't this. I need help, Victor continued, his voice matter of fact. I have staff, Mrs. Chen, security, others. But what I don't have is someone dedicated to the children. Someone who can be there when they wake up, help with homework, make sure they eat, listen when they need to talk. I've had 3 nannies in the past year. None of them lasted. Why not? Alina asked. Something flickered across Victor's face. My life is complicated. The children are grieving and difficult. The hours are irregular. And frankly, most people aren't comfortable with my line of work once they understand what it is. What is your line of work? Victor's eyes met hers directly. I run several businesses, some legitimate, some less so. I have enemies, people who would hurt me by hurting the people I care about. This house is secure, heavily guarded, but living here means living with that reality. It means accepting that danger is always a possibility. Alina's heart was pounding. He was talking about organized crime. Had to be. No one talked about enemies and security and less legitimate businesses unless they were involved in something illegal. She should be terrified. Should be running for the door. But she wasn't. Maybe it was because she'd already faced death and survived. Maybe it was because Marcus had taught her that monsters came in all forms, and at least Victor was honest about what he was. Or maybe it was because she had absolutely nothing to lose. What are you offering? She asked. A job, Victor said. Take care of my children. Be there for them. In exchange, you'll have a room here, food, a salary, safety, and more importantly, a purpose. Why me? I'm not a nanny. I have no experience with children. I was literally dying on a sidewalk last night. Exactly. Victor leaned forward slightly. You know what it's like to have nothing. You know what it's like to suffer. My children are drowning in grief and anger, and every qualified professional nanny I've hired has treated them like problems to be managed. I don't want someone professional. I want someone real, someone who understands pain. Alina stared at him. That's insane. Probably. Victor's mouth quirked in what might have been the ghost of a smile. But I'm not offering you a normal situation. I'm offering you a chance to rebuild your life while helping 3 children who need someone like you more than they need someone who knows the proper bedtime routine. What if I can't do it? What if they hate me? Then we'll figure something else out. But I think you're stronger than you believe you are, Alina. Strong enough to survive what you've survived. Strong enough to do this. Alina's mind reeled. This was crazy. All of it. Accepting a job from a man she didn't know. Taking care of children she'd never met. Living in a house that was apparently under constant threat. But what was the alternative? Go back to the street? Try to find Marcus? Attempt to restart a life she didn't even want? At least here, she could be useful. At least here, she had a chance. Okay, she heard herself say. I'll try. Victor nodded as if he'd expected nothing less. The children will be home from school at 3:30. I'll introduce you then. In the meantime, Mrs. Chen will show you around and explain the household routine. He stood, and Alina stood too, taking it as a dismissal. Alina, Victor said as she reached the door. She turned back. Welcome to the family. The words hit her harder than they should have. Family. She hadn't had one of those in so long she'd forgotten what it felt like. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe she'd regret it. But as she left Victor's office and followed Mrs. Chen through the mansion that was now apparently her home, Alina felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Mrs. Chen showed her around the house. 30 rooms, she said, though Alina quickly lost count. There was a library, a gym, a media room, multiple living rooms, a formal dining room that seated 20, and a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a restaurant. The children's rooms are on the 3rd floor, Mrs. Chen explained as they climbed another staircase. Mr. Moretti wanted them to have their own space. The third floor was different from the rest of the house. More colorful, less formal. There were 3 bedrooms, one clearly belonging to a teenage girl, decorated in purples and grays, one that screamed 10-year-old boy, with sports posters and a gaming console, and one that was unmistakably a little girl's room, all pinks and whites and stuffed animals. Isabella is the oldest, Mrs. Chen said. She's challenging, very protective of her siblings. She's taken her mother's death the hardest. Alina nodded, understanding more than Mrs. Chen probably realized. She'd been 13 once. She remembered how it felt to lose a mother, to be angry at the world, to push everyone away. Marco is quieter, Mrs. Chen continued. He keeps to himself mostly, spends a lot of time reading or gaming. He used to play soccer, but he quit after his mother died. And Sophia? Mrs. Chen's expression softened. She was only 3 when her mother passed. She barely remembers her. But she has nightmares, asks for her mama sometimes. It breaks my heart. Alina's chest tightened. 5 years old and already carrying that kind of loss. They're good children, Mrs. Chen said firmly. They're just hurting. They need patience and understanding, and maybe someone who doesn't treat them like they're broken. I'll do my best, Alina promised. They returned to the second floor, and Mrs. Chen showed Alina to her new room, not the guest room she'd slept in last night, but a permanent space. It was smaller than the guest room, but still larger than anywhere Alina had ever lived. It had a window overlooking the gardens, a small sitting area, and a bathroom of her own. Lunch will be ready at noon, Mrs. Chen said, and the children's bus arrives at 3:30. Mr. Moretti will be in meetings until then, but I'll be here if you need anything. After Mrs. Chen left, Alina sat on her new bed and tried to process everything that had happened in the past 12 hours. Yesterday, she'd been homeless and dying. Today, she had a room, a job, a chance. It didn't feel real. She pulled her mother's ring from her pocket. She'd kept it with her even after changing clothes, and slipped it onto her finger for the first time in 2 years. Marcus had forbidden her from wearing it, said it was ugly and worthless. But it wasn't worthless. It was a reminder of where she'd come from, of what she'd survived, of who she was when someone actually loved her. Alina closed her eyes and made a silent promise to the mother she'd lost when she was 16. I won't waste this chance. Whatever this is, whatever happens, I won't give up again. At 3:25 p.m., Alina stood in the entryway with Victor, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. Remember, Victor said quietly, they're going to test you. Isabella especially. Don't take it personally. Okay? Alina managed. At precisely 3:30, headlights appeared through the front windows. A small bus pulled up the driveway, and Alina's stomach churned with nervousness. The door opened, and 3 children spilled out. The first was clearly Isabella, tall for 13, with long dark hair and her father's sharp features. She wore a school uniform with calculated messiness, and her eyes went immediately to Alina with undisguised suspicion. Marco came next, small for 10, with shaggy brown hair and glasses. He barely glanced at Alina before ducking his head and heading inside. And then Sophia, tiny and delicate, with curly brown hair and huge dark eyes. She clutched a stuffed rabbit and looked at Alina with curiosity rather than suspicion. Children, Victor said, his voice warm in a way Alina hadn't heard before. This is Alina. She's going to be staying with us and helping take care of you. Another one? Isabella's voice was sharp. How long is this one going to last? A week? 2? Isabella, Victor said, a warning in his tone. What? I'm just being realistic. They always leave. Alina's heart ached for this angry, hurting girl. She knew that anger, had carried it herself. Hi, Alina said, keeping her voice gentle. It's nice to meet you all. Marco mumbled something that might have been a greeting and disappeared up the stairs. Isabella rolled her eyes and followed him, but Sophia stayed staring at Alina with those big eyes. What's your name again? She asked, her voice small. Alina. That's pretty. Sophia hugged her rabbit tighter. Are you going to leave like the others? The question was so direct, so heartbreakingly honest, that Alina had to swallow hard before answering. I'm going to try my best to stay, she said truthfully. Would that be okay with you? Sophia considered this seriously. Then she nodded. Okay. Do you like tea parties? Despite everything, Alina felt herself smile. I've never had one. Sophia's eyes went wide. Never? We have to fix that. Come on. She grabbed Alina's hand with complete trust and tugged her toward the stairs. Alina looked back at Victor, who was watching with an expression she couldn't quite read. He nodded once, encouragingly. And just like that, Alina's new life began. Sophia's tea party took place in her bedroom, with Alina sitting cross-legged on a pink carpet surrounded by stuffed animals arranged in a careful circle. The little girl poured imaginary tea from a plastic teapot with the seriousness of someone performing surgery. This is Mr. Hoppy, Sophia said, gesturing to the rabbit she'd been carrying. And that's Princess, and that's George, and that's Buttons. She pointed to each stuffed animal in turn. They all like sugar in their tea except George. George is watching his figure. Alina bit back a smile. I see. That's very thoughtful of George. Mama used to say that, Sophia said, her voice suddenly smaller, about watching her figure. I don't really know what it means, but it sounds grown up. Alina's heart squeezed. Your mama sounds like she was very smart. She was the smartest. Sophia poured more invisible tea. Do you have a mama? I did. She died when I was 16. Sophia's eyes went wide. That's sad. Do you miss her? Every day. The little girl was quiet for a moment, her small hands still on the teapot. I miss mine too, but sometimes I can't remember her face. Is that bad? Alina reached out and gently touched Sophia's hand. No, sweetheart, that's not bad. You were very little when she went away, but the love she had for you, that doesn't go away. That stays forever. Sophia looked up at her with those impossibly big eyes. Really? Really? A small smile crossed Sophia's face. Then she went back to pouring tea, chattering about which stuffed animal was the naughtiest and which one always finished their vegetables. Alina listened, responding when appropriate, and felt something unfamiliar settling in her chest. Purpose. This was what purpose felt like. After an hour, Mrs. Chen appeared at the door. Sophia, time for homework, dear. But we're not done with tea, Sophia protested. We can finish tomorrow, Alina said gently. Mr. Hoppy and the others will wait. Sophia considered this, then nodded. Okay, but you promise you'll come back? I promise. The little girl threw her arms around Alina's waist in a quick hug that nearly knocked the breath out of her, then skipped off with Mrs. Chen, already chattering about her spelling words. Alina stood slowly, her legs stiff from sitting on the floor. Through the open door, she could see down the hallway to Marco's room. The door was cracked, and she could hear the sounds of video game music. She approached quietly and knocked on the door frame. Marco, can I come in? The music paused. I guess. Alina pushed the door open. Marco's room was exactly what she'd expected. Posters of soccer players and superheroes, shelves lined with books and action figures, a gaming setup that probably cost more than most cars. Marco himself sat at his desk, controller in hand, not looking at her. What are you playing? Alina asked. Just a game. His voice was flat, guarded. Cool. Alina stayed in the doorway, not wanting to intrude. Mrs. Chen said you used to play soccer. Marco's shoulders tensed. Yeah, not anymore. Why'd you stop? Because. He still wasn't looking at her. Because it doesn't matter. Alina recognized that tone. It was the same one she'd used when people asked her why she stayed with Marcus, why she didn't just leave, why she let him hurt her, because explaining hurt worse than staying silent. Okay, she said simply. Well, if you ever want to talk, or if you need anything, I'm around. She started to leave, but Marco's voice stopped her. The others left because of Isabella. Alina turned back. What? The other nannies. They left because Isabella made them miserable. She'll make you leave too. Maybe, Alina said honestly, but I'm not leaving because things get hard. I'm tougher than I look. Marco finally glanced at her, his eyes sharp behind his glasses. Why are you even here? Dad said he found you on the street. Why would you want to stay in a place like this? It was a fair question, and Marco deserved an honest answer. Because I have nowhere else to go, Alina said quietly. And because sometimes the scariest thing isn't staying, it's giving up. Marco stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded once and turned back to his game. Whatever, just don't expect Isabella to make it easy. I won't, Alina promised. She left him to his game and headed back downstairs. Victor was in his office, door closed, probably in one of those meetings Mrs. Chen had mentioned. The house was quiet, except for the distant sounds of Mrs. Chen in the kitchen and Sophia's voice drifting from somewhere upstairs. Alina found herself in the library, drawn by the floor-to-ceiling shelves. She ran her fingers along the spines: classics, modern fiction, history, philosophy. A lifetime of reading material. Finding everything you need? Alina spun around. Victor stood in the doorway, jacket off, sleeves still rolled up, looking tired in a way he hadn't this morning. I was just exploring, Alina said quickly. I didn't mean to— You live here now, Victor interrupted. You don't need permission to exist in the space. The library is yours as much as anyone's. Alina nodded, relaxing slightly. How did the meetings go? As expected. Victor moved into the room, pouring himself a drink from a crystal decanter on a side table. How did the introductions go? Sophia invited me to a tea party. Marco tolerated my presence. Isabella— Alina trailed off. Didn't acknowledge your existence? Victor's mouth quirked. That's actually better than I expected. Usually she's actively hostile by now. Marco said she drove the other nannies away. She did. Victor took a sip of his drink, whiskey, from the smell. Isabella has decided that loving people means losing them, so she pushes everyone away before they can leave. It's not personal. It feels personal when you're the target. I know. Victor's expression softened slightly. But you understand that pain, don't you? The need to protect yourself by keeping people at a distance? Alina's breath caught. He was right, of course. She'd done the same thing for years, even before Marcus. After her mother died, she'd shut everyone out, convinced herself she was better off alone. Yes, she admitted. Then you'll understand Isabella better than any of the others did. Victor set his glass down. Dinner is at 6. The children eat in the kitchen usually, but tonight we'll use the dining room. I want them to see us as a unit. A unit? You're part of this household now, Alina. Not staff, not a guest, part of the family. The children need to understand that. Family. There was that word again, hitting her right in the chest. Victor left her in the library, and Alina sank into one of the leather chairs, her mind spinning. She'd been here less than 24 hours, and her entire world had shifted. Yesterday, she was nobody. Today she was— What? A nanny? A guardian? A member of Victor Moretti's complicated, dangerous, grieving family? At 6 o'clock, Alina made her way to the dining room. The table that could seat 20 was set for 5 at one end, Victor at the head, Sophia on his right, and 3 other places presumably for Isabella, Marco, and Alina. Sophia was already there, swinging her legs and humming to herself. She brightened when she saw Alina. You're here. I told Mr. Hoppy you'd come to dinner. Is Mr. Hoppy joining us? Alina asked, taking the seat next to Sophia. He's not allowed at the table. Daddy says stuffed animals don't need to eat. That's very practical of your daddy. Marco appeared next, sliding into his seat without comment. He'd changed into a hoodie and jeans, his hair still damp from what was probably a very quick shower. Isabella was last. She walked in like she was entering a battlefield, her eyes immediately finding Alina and narrowing. She sat as far from Alina as possible, across the table and down one seat. Victor arrived moments later, and Mrs. Chen began serving roasted chicken, vegetables, fresh bread, salad, the kind of meal Alina had only seen in magazines. So, Victor said, serving himself, how was school today? Fine, Marco muttered. Boring, Isabella said flatly. I painted a butterfly, Sophia announced. It has 6 legs and 2 wings and a smiley face. Butterflies don't have smiley faces, Isabella said. Mine does. Victor's mouth twitched. I'm sure it's beautiful, Piccola. Did you bring it home? It's drying. Mrs. Chen said we can hang it on the fridge tomorrow. Alina picked at her food, hyper-aware of Isabella's gaze on her. The girl hadn't said a word directly to her, but the hostility was palpable. Isabella, Victor said, your English teacher called me today. Isabella's fork paused halfway to her mouth. What did she say? That you've been skipping homework assignments? I've been busy. Busy doing what? Things. Isabella's jaw set in a way that reminded Alina painfully of herself at that age. That's not an answer. Well, it's the only one you're getting. The tension at the table spiked. Sophia stopped swinging her legs. Marco studied his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. Isabella, Victor's voice was quiet but firm. You will complete your assignments, or you will lose your phone privileges. Your choice. Fine. Whatever. Isabella threw her napkin on her plate and stood. I'm not hungry anyway. Sit down. No. Father and daughter stared at each other across the table, and Alina could see the grief in both their faces. Victor's carefully controlled, Isabella's raw and angry. Please, Victor said, and something in his voice made Isabella hesitate. Just sit. Finish dinner. We don't have to talk about school. Isabella wavered. For a moment, Alina thought she'd storm out anyway, but then she sat, picking up her fork with jerky movements, her face flushed. The rest of dinner passed in tense silence. Sophia tried to fill it with chatter about butterflies and tea parties, but even her sunshine couldn't quite cut through the darkness. When it was over, Isabella disappeared upstairs without a word. Marco followed shortly after. Sophia lingered, helping Mrs. Chen clear plates, until Victor gently sent her to get ready for bed. Alina stood to help with the dishes, but Mrs. Chen waved her off. You go on, dear. I've got this. Alina found herself wandering back to her room, emotionally exhausted despite having done very little. She changed into the pajamas from last night and was about to climb into bed when a knock sounded at her door. Come in, she called. Victor stepped inside, and Alina was suddenly very aware that she was in pajamas, that this was her bedroom, that this whole situation was deeply strange. I wanted to apologize, Victor said, for Isabella's behavior at dinner. You don't need to apologize. She's grieving. She's also 13 and thinks the world owes her something because she's in pain. Victor ran a hand through his hair. I don't know how to reach her anymore. I don't know how to help her. Alina saw the exhaustion in his face, the weight he carried. This man who ran criminal empires and commanded fear was brought to his knees by a teenage daughter's grief. You can't fix her pain, Alina said quietly. You can only be there while she feels it. Is that what your mother did when you were grieving? No? Alina's throat tightened. My mother died, and I had no one. I was angry and lost, and I pushed everyone away until there was no one left to push, and then I made terrible choices because I thought I deserved to suffer. Victor's eyes sharpened. Your husband. It wasn't a question. Alina wondered how much he'd guessed, how much he'd seen in her bruises and hollowed-out eyes. Yes, she whispered. Does he know where you are? No, and I want to keep it that way. Victor nodded slowly. You're safe here, Alina. I meant what I said. This house is secure. No one gets in without my permission. Why? The question burst out of her. Why do you care? I'm nobody. Just some broken woman you found on the street. You're not broken, Victor said firmly. You're surviving. There's a difference. He moved toward the door, then paused. And for what it's worth, I don't think you're nobody. I think you're exactly what this family needs right now. He left before Alina could respond. She lay in bed for a long time, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how her life had become this surreal. But eventually, exhaustion won, and she drifted into sleep. The next few days fell into a rhythm. Alina woke early, had breakfast with Mrs. Chen, and spent mornings familiarizing herself with the house and the children's schedules. Afternoons were for homework help and activities. Evenings were dinner, bedtime routines, and stolen moments of quiet. Sophia attached herself to Alina immediately, following her around like a small, chattering shadow. She insisted on daily tea parties, wanted Alina to read her bedtime stories, and held Alina's hand whenever possible. Marco remained distant, but not hostile. He answered when Alina spoke to him, allowed her to help with math homework, and occasionally emerged from his room to eat snacks in the kitchen while she was there. Progress, Mrs. Chen assured her, even if it didn't feel like much. Isabella, however, was a wall of ice. She ignored Alina completely, spoke only when forced to, and made it abundantly clear that Alina's presence was unwelcome. When Alina tried to ask about her homework, Isabella shut her door in her face. When Alina offered to help with anything, Isabella's response was always the same. I don't need your help. On the fourth day, Alina found Isabella in the library, curled in the same chair Alina had claimed the first night. The girl was reading, her long hair falling forward to hide her face. Alina almost turned around and left, but something made her stay. What are you reading? She asked. Isabella didn't look up. A book. What book? Does it matter? I'm just making conversation. Well, don't. Isabella turned a page aggressively. I don't want to talk to you. Alina nodded and selected a book from the shelf, one she'd been meaning to read, and settled into a chair across the room. She said nothing, just opened her book and started reading. She could feel Isabella's confusion, her wariness. The girl clearly expected Alina to keep pushing, to demand attention, to try to force connection. But Alina just read. After 20 minutes, Isabella spoke. Why are you still here? I'm reading. You can read in your room. So can you. Silence. Then, you're weird. Probably, Alina agreed, not looking up from her page. Another 10 minutes passed. Alina was actually getting absorbed in her book when Isabella spoke again. The other nannies always tried to be my friend. It was annoying. I'm not trying to be your friend, Alina said. I'm just reading in the same room as you. Why? Because I like this chair. And because the library has good light. Isabella was quiet for a moment. My mom used to read in here, in that exact chair. Alina's heart clenched, but she kept her voice casual. Did she? What did she read? Everything. Novels, poetry, history. She said books were how you lived 1,000 lives. Isabella's voice had gone soft, almost dreamy. She'd read to us every night. Different books for each of us, because we all like different things. That sounds lovely. It was. The softness vanished, replaced by hard edges. And then she died, and everything stopped being lovely. Alina closed her book and looked at Isabella fully for the first time. The girl was staring at her with a mixture of pain and defiance. I know, Alina said quietly. No, you don't. You didn't know her. You don't know anything about us. You're right. I didn't know your mother, and I don't know what it's like to be you. But I do know what it's like to lose someone you love and feel like the world should have stopped, but didn't. Isabella's eyes narrowed. Who did you lose? My mother, when I was 16. How? Cancer. It took 6 months from diagnosis to death. Isabella was quiet, studying Alina like she was a puzzle to be solved. Did it get easier? No, Alina said honestly. It got different. The pain changed shape, became something I could carry instead of something that crushed me. But easier? No. Everyone says it gets easier. That time heals, that I'll move on. Everyone says a lot of stupid things when they don't know what else to say. A ghost of a smile crossed Isabella's face. Yeah, they do. They sat in silence for a while, both pretending to read but neither really focusing on the pages. I don't want to like you, Isabella said finally. I don't want to get used to you being here. Okay, because you'll leave. Everyone leaves. Maybe I will, Alina said. I don't know the future, but I'm not planning to leave. And I'm definitely not leaving because things are hard or because someone's mean to me. I can be really mean. I've survived worse than mean. Isabella's eyes sharpened with curiosity, but she didn't push. Instead, she went back to her book, and Alina went back to hers. It wasn't friendship. It wasn't even warmth. But it was the first crack in Isabella's armor, and Alina would take it. That night, as Alina was getting Sophia ready for bed, the little girl suddenly asked, Do you like it here? Yes, Alina said, brushing Sophia's hair. I like it very much. Good, because I like you being here. Sophia paused. Isabella likes you too. She just doesn't want to say it. What makes you think that? Because she asked Marco if he thought you were nice, and she only asks about people she's thinking about. Alina smiled. Well, that's good to know. After tucking Sophia in with Mr. Hoppy and 3 other essential stuffed animals, Alina headed downstairs. She found Victor in the kitchen, which was unusual. He was usually in his office or out somewhere doing whatever mysterious things he did. He was making coffee, still dressed in the suit he'd worn all day, looking tired and tense. Couldn't sleep? Alina asked. Victor glanced at her. Something like that. Want some? Sure. He poured 2 cups, and they sat at the kitchen island in comfortable silence. Outside, security lights illuminated the grounds, and Alina could see the shadows of guards patrolling. You're doing well with them, Victor said after a while. Better than I expected. Isabella still hates me. Isabella hates everyone. But she was in the library with you today. That's significant. We just read, we barely spoke. Exactly. You didn't push. You didn't try to force connection. You just existed in her space without demanding anything. Victor took a sip of his coffee. That's what she needs, someone who doesn't need her to be okay. Alina thought about that. Is that why you chose me? Because I'm broken enough to understand broken people? You're not broken, Victor said again, that same firmness in his voice. And I chose you because I saw strength, not weakness. It takes incredible strength to keep fighting when everything's been taken from you. I wasn't fighting. I was dying. But you took my hand anyway. You got in the car. You're still here. Victor's dark eyes met hers. That's fighting, Alina. That's choosing to live even when it hurts. Alina's throat tightened. Why do you care so much? About me? About what happens to me? Victor was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, softer, more vulnerable than she'd ever heard it. Because 2 years ago, I lost my wife. And for months after, I was where you were. Not on a sidewalk, but in my head. Wanting everything to stop, wanting to give up. The only thing that kept me going was them. He gestured upward toward where the children slept. But I understand that darkness, Alina, and I understand how hard it is to crawl out of it. I'm sorry, Alina whispered. About your wife. So am I. Victor's jaw tightened. She was everything good in my life, everything light. And when she died, it took me a long time to remember why I was supposed to keep breathing. What was her name? Elena. A sad smile crossed Victor's face. She was beautiful and fierce, and she saw the best in everyone, even me, especially me. How did she die? Victor's expression shuddered. That's a conversation for another night. Alina nodded, understanding. Some pain was too fresh to expose even years later. They finished their coffee in silence, and Alina headed back to her room. But as she lay in bed, she thought about Victor's words. About choosing to live even when it hurt. About fighting even when you were losing. Maybe she was stronger than she thought. Maybe surviving Marcus, surviving the streets, surviving the cold. Maybe all of that meant something. Maybe she deserved to be here after all. The next morning, Alina woke to chaos. Sophia was crying, Marco was yelling, and Isabella's voice cut through everything else like a knife. Alina threw on a robe and ran into the hallway. All 3 children stood outside Sophia's room, and the little girl was sobbing into Marco's shoulder. What happened? Alina asked. Mr. Hoppy's missing, Isabella said, her face pale. Sophia can't find him anywhere. I had him at breakfast, Sophia hiccuped. And then he was gone, and I looked everywhere, and he's gone. Okay, Alina soothed, kneeling in front of the little girl. We'll find him, I promise. When did you last see him? In the kitchen. I put him on the counter while I ate my cereal. Alina looked at Marco and Isabella. Help me search. Check every room on this floor. Sophia, you stay with me. For once, Isabella didn't argue. The 3 of them split up, searching bedrooms, bathrooms, closets. Sophia clung to Alina's hand, still crying, and Alina's heart ached for her. 20 minutes later, they reconvened empty-handed. Sophia was inconsolable now, and even Marco looked worried. Mrs. Chen, Alina called, heading downstairs. Have you seen Sophia's rabbit? The housekeeper appeared from the laundry room. The stuffed one. Oh dear, I think it might have gotten mixed in with the linens. I was doing washing this morning. They hurried to the laundry room, and sure enough, there was Mr. Hoppy, tumbling in the dryer with a load of towels. No, Sophia wailed. He's going to be ruined. Mrs. Chen quickly stopped the dryer and pulled out the slightly damp rabbit. He's fine, sweetheart, just a little warm. But Sophia wouldn't be consoled. He hates being wet. He's going to be sad forever. Alina took the rabbit gently. Hey, look at me. Mr. Hoppy is okay. He just had an adventure. Sometimes adventures are scary, but he came through it fine. But what if he's mad at me? He's not mad. He knows you love him. And love means forgiving accidents. Alina held the rabbit up. See? He's already smiling. Sophia sniffled and took Mr. Hoppy, hugging him close despite his dampness. You promise he's okay? I promise. The crisis averted, the children headed off to school. But as they were leaving, Isabella paused at the door and looked back at Alina. Thanks, she said quietly, for not making her feel stupid about the rabbit. He's important to her. I know. Our mom gave him to her, right before… Isabella trailed off, then shook her head. Anyway, thanks. She left before Alina could respond, but warmth spread through Alina's chest. Progress. Slow, painful progress, but progress nonetheless. The days continued to pass, each one bringing small victories and new challenges. Alina helped Marco with a science project and discovered he was brilliant with numbers. She attended one of Sophia's school performances and clapped louder than anyone. She found Isabella crying in her room one night and sat with her without asking questions, just being present until the tears stopped. And slowly, carefully, something that looked almost like family began to form. But Alina knew better than most that peace never lasted forever. 3 weeks had passed since that first frozen night, and Alina was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have this life. That maybe the universe had decided she'd suffered enough and was giving her a chance to heal. She should have known better. It was a Tuesday afternoon, unseasonably warm for March in Chicago. Alina had taken Sophia to the park near the estate, a private area within the gated community where Victor's security could watch from a discreet distance. Sophia was on the swings, her laughter ringing out like bells, and Alina was pushing her higher and higher. More, Sophia squealed. I want to touch the sky. You're almost there, Alina laughed, giving another push. She felt it before she saw it, that prickling awareness that comes from being watched, not by the security guards, who she'd grown used to. This was different. This was predatory. Alina's hands stilled on the swing, and she turned slowly, scanning the park. Mothers with strollers, an elderly man walking a dog, a jogger passing by. Nothing unusual, but the feeling didn't go away. Why did we stop? Sophia asked, dragging her feet to slow the swing. Just taking a break, sweetheart. Alina forced a smile. How about we head home? Mrs. Chen said she was making cookies. Chocolate chip? Is there any other kind? Sophia jumped off the swing and grabbed Alina's hand, already chattering about how many cookies she was going to eat. But Alina kept glancing over her shoulder as they walked back toward the house, that uneasy feeling growing stronger with each step. She was being paranoid, she told herself. Marcus didn't know where she was. He couldn't know. She'd disappeared completely, left no trail, had no phone, no social media, nothing that could lead him here. But fear didn't listen to logic. That night, Alina couldn't shake the anxiety. She went through the motions, helping with homework, making dinner with Mrs. Chen, reading Sophia her bedtime story, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying every face she'd seen at the park, searching for familiarity. You're quiet tonight, Victor observed. They were in the kitchen again, their late-night coffee ritual having become routine. Something wrong? Alina hesitated. Probably nothing. I just had a weird feeling at the park today, like someone was watching us. Victor's expression sharpened immediately. Did you see anyone suspicious? No. That's why I said it's probably nothing. I'm just being paranoid. Paranoia keeps you alive in my world. Victor pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. I'll have security review the park footage and increase patrols around the perimeter. Better safe than sorry. I'm probably overreacting. Or you're not. Victor's eyes met hers, serious and intent. Trust your instincts, Alina. They've kept you alive this long. 2 days later, Alina was in the library with Isabella when Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, her face pale. Alina, there's someone at the gate asking for you. The book Alina was holding slipped from her fingers. What? A man. He says he's your husband, and he wants to speak with you. The world tilted. No. No, this couldn't be happening. How did he find her? How did Marcus find her? Alina? Isabella's voice seemed to come from very far away. Are you okay? You look like you're going to pass out. Alina couldn't breathe. Her chest was tight, her vision narrowing to a pinpoint. Marcus was here, at the gate. He'd found her. Where's my father? Isabella demanded, standing up. In a meeting, but I've sent for him, Mrs. Chen said. Alina, dear, do you want to speak to this man? No. The word came out as a gasp. No, I don't. I can't. Then you don't have to. Victor's voice cut through the panic. He strode into the library, his face hard as stone. No one sees her without her permission. Tell security to remove him from the property. He's refusing to leave, Mrs. Chen said quietly. He says he has a legal right to see his wife. He has no rights here. Victor's voice was ice. Tell security if he's not gone in 5 minutes, they can make him leave, forcibly if necessary. Mrs. Chen nodded and hurried away. Victor turned to Alina, his expression softening slightly. Breathe, Alina. You're safe. He can't get in. But Alina couldn't breathe. She was back in that apartment, Marcus's hand around her throat, his voice in her ear telling her she was worthless, that she belonged to him, that she'd never escape. Isabella, get your brothers, Victor said. Take them upstairs and stay there until I come get you. But now. Isabella must have heard something in her father's tone because she left without further argument. Victor knelt in front of Alina, his hands on her shoulders. Look at me. Alina, look at me. She forced her eyes to focus on his face. He cannot hurt you here, Victor said clearly. The gates are locked. Security is armed. He would have to go through a dozen men to get to you, and that's not going to happen. Do you understand? Alina nodded, but her whole body was shaking. Do you want to see him? Talk to him? No. Her voice was barely a whisper. Then you don't have to. But Alina, this isn't going to end here. If he found you once, he'll try again. We need to deal with this. How? Victor's jaw tightened. I can make him disappear, permanently. One word from you, and he'll never bother you again. The offer hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Alina knew what Victor was saying, knew what he was capable of. This man who ran criminal empires, who had enemies and security and the power to make people vanish, he was offering to kill her husband, part of her. The broken part that had suffered for 2 years, wanted to say yes, wanted Marcus gone, erased, removed from existence so thoroughly that she could pretend he'd never existed. But she couldn't, because that would make her just like him, someone who solved problems with violence, who took what they wanted without regard for consequences. No, she said, I don't want that. I don't want to become someone who does that. Something that might have been respect flickered in Victor's eyes. Then we do this legally. Divorce, restraining order, documentation of abuse. We make sure he can never touch you again without ending up in prison. He'll fight it. He'll lie. He always lies. Let him lie. I have resources he can't imagine. Lawyers who will bury him in paperwork. Investigators who will find every dirty secret he's ever had. Victor's voice was fierce. You're not alone in this, Alina. You have me. You have this family. And we protect our own. Tears spilled down Alina's cheeks. Why? Why would you do all this for me? Because you're one of us now, and because no one deserves what he did to you. Victor stood, pulling out his phone. Stay here. I'm going to make some calls. He left, and Alina sat in the library, trembling, listening to the sounds of the house around her. Somewhere upstairs, she could hear Sophia asking Isabella what was wrong, Isabella's sharp reply, Marco's quieter voice trying to calm them both. This family, these children who were starting to trust her, to depend on her. She couldn't let Marcus destroy this, couldn't let him take away the only good thing she'd found in years. She had to fight back. 20 minutes later, Victor returned with a woman in her 50s, dressed in an immaculate suit, carrying a leather briefcase. Alina, this is Catherine Reeves. She's one of the best divorce attorneys in Illinois. Catherine's handshake was firm, her eyes sharp but kind. Mr. Moretti has briefed me on your situation. I need to ask you some difficult questions, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Can you do that? Alina nodded. They sat in Victor's office for 2 hours. Catherine asked about everything, how long she'd been married, when the abuse started, what forms it took, whether there was documentation, witnesses, anything that could build a case. Alina answered as best she could, forcing herself to relive moments she'd tried so hard to forget. Marcus grabbing her arm hard enough to bruise because dinner wasn't ready on time. Marcus pushing her into a wall because she'd smiled at a grocery store clerk. Marcus's hand around her throat because she couldn't give him a child, squeezing until black spots danced in her vision. "Did you ever go to the hospital?" Catherine asked. "Once. He cracked my rib. I told them I fell down the stairs." "Do you remember which hospital?" "Northwestern Memorial. About 18 months ago." Catherine made notes. "We can subpoena those records. What about police? Did you ever call them?" "No, he said if I did, he'd kill me." And I believed him. "Witnesses? Anyone who saw the abuse or its aftermath?" Alina thought. "Maybe. There was a neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. She saw bruises sometimes, asked me about them. I always lied, but she might have suspected. We'll find her." Catherine's pen flew across her legal pad. "What about financial records? Joint accounts?" "He controlled everything. I wasn't allowed to have my own money. That's financial abuse, and it's documented. We can use that." Catherine looked up. "Alina, I'm going to be honest with you. This won't be easy. Your husband will fight. He'll try to drag your name through the mud, claim you're lying, make you out to be the villain. But with Mr. Moretti's resources and what you've told me, we can build a case that will not only get you divorced, but potentially get him criminally charged." "Criminally charged?" "Domestic violence is a crime. If we can prove even a fraction of what you've described, he could face jail time." The thought sent a thrill of fear and hope through Alina. Marcus in prison. Marcus unable to hurt anyone else. Marcus finally facing consequences for what he'd done. "How long will this take?" she asked. "Months, probably. But we'll start with a restraining order. That can happen within days. And Mr. Moretti's security will ensure your physical safety in the meantime." After Catherine left, Alina felt hollowed out, like she'd purged something toxic but necessary. Victor appeared in the doorway with a glass of water. "You did well," he said. "I feel like I'm going to throw up." "That's normal. You just spent 2 hours reliving your trauma. Anyone would feel sick." He handed her the water. "The children are worried about you, Sophia especially. She wants to know if you're okay." Alina's heart clenched. "I should go see them." "Not yet. Take a minute. Breathe. You can't take care of them if you're falling apart." He was right. Alina sipped the water and focused on breathing, on grounding herself in the present moment. She was safe. Marcus couldn't get in. She had help now, resources, protection. When her hands stopped shaking, she went upstairs. All 3 children were in Sophia's room. The little girl was clutching Mr. Hoppy, her eyes red from crying. Marco sat on the bed next to her, looking anxious. Isabella stood by the window, arms crossed, her face a carefully constructed mask of indifference that didn't quite hide her concern. "Hey," Alina said softly from the doorway. Sophia launched herself off the bed and wrapped her arms around Alina's waist. "Are you okay? Bella said your husband came and you were scared, and Daddy said we had to stay here and I was worried. I'm okay, sweetheart." Alina knelt down to Sophia's level. "I promise. I'm okay." "Is the bad man gone?" Alina's throat tightened. So they knew. Of course they knew. They'd lost their mother. They understood that people could be dangerous, that the world wasn't always safe. "Yes, he's gone, and he's not coming back. Daddy said he can't get in, that the guards won't let him." Sophia's lower lip trembled. "Is that true?" "It's absolutely true. Your daddy is very good at keeping people safe." Marco spoke up from the bed. "Is he going to keep trying to get to you?" "I don't know," Alina said honestly. "But if he does, we're ready. We have lawyers and security and a plan. He can't hurt me anymore." "Good." The word came from Isabella, sharp and fierce. "Because if he tries, he'll have to go through all of us." Alina looked at the teenage girl standing by the window, this child who'd pushed her away for weeks, and saw something new in her eyes. Protection. Belonging. Family. "Thank you," Alina whispered. Isabella shrugged, trying to look casual. "Whatever, we just don't want to lose another person. It would be inconvenient." The words were dismissive, but her voice cracked slightly on the last word, betraying her. That night, after the children were in bed, Alina found Victor on the back terrace. He was smoking a cigarette, something she'd never seen him do, and staring out at the dark gardens. "I didn't know you smoked," she said, stepping outside. "I don't, usually." Victor took a drag. "Bad habit from another life." Alina stood beside him, wrapping her arms around herself against the cool night air. "Thank you. For today. For everything." "You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do. You could have just kicked me out, told me I was too much trouble, that my problems would bring danger to your family. But you didn't." Victor flicked ash into a tray. "Your problems are my problems now. That's what family means." There it was again. Family. The word that kept appearing, kept wrapping around her like a warm blanket. "The children were scared today," Alina said. "Especially Sophia. They've learned that the people they love can be taken away. Of course they were scared." Victor's jaw tightened. "But they've also learned that we fight to protect each other. That's an important lesson, too. Isabella called me one of them. Said Marcus would have to go through all of them to get to me." A small smile crossed Victor's face. "Isabella's decided you're worth keeping. That's high praise from her. I don't want to put them in danger. They're already in danger. My children, by virtue of being mine, live with a target on their backs. One more doesn't change the math." Victor stubbed out his cigarette. "Besides, you're not putting them in danger. Your husband is. And he'll answer for that." The quiet menace in Victor's voice sent a shiver down Alina's spine. This man was dangerous, she reminded herself. Powerful and ruthless and capable of terrible things. But right now, all that danger was pointed away from her, aimed at the person who'd hurt her. It should have frightened her. Instead, she felt protected. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now, we wait for Catherine to file the paperwork. The restraining order should be in place by the end of the week. After that, we let the legal system do its work." Victor turned to face her. "But Alina, you need to be prepared. This is going to get ugly. Your husband will say terrible things about you. He'll try to manipulate you, threaten you, break you down. Can you handle that?" Could she? Alina thought about the woman she'd been 3 weeks ago, ready to die on a frozen sidewalk. Thought about the woman she was becoming, the one who read to children and stood up to teenage anger and chose to fight instead of flee. "Yes," she said. "I can handle it." "Good." Victor's eyes held hers. "Because we're going to destroy him." The restraining order was served on Thursday. Catherine called to confirm that Marcus had been legally notified that he was to stay at least 500 feet away from Alina at all times, that any violation would result in immediate arrest. Alina expected to feel relief. Instead, she felt terror. Marcus didn't respond well to being told what to do. He'd see this as a challenge, as Alina trying to embarrass him, control him. He'd retaliate. She knew he would. The question was how. Friday morning, Alina was helping Sophia get ready for school when her phone rang. The phone was new. Victor had insisted she have one, had put it in her name, paid for it himself. The only people who had the number were Victor, Catherine, and Mrs. Chen. The number on the screen was unknown. Alina's hand shook as she answered. "Hello? So this is where you've been hiding." Marcus's voice sent ice through her veins. Sophia, sensing something wrong, grabbed Mr. Hoppy and moved closer. "How did you get this number?" Alina's voice came out steadier than she felt. "I have my ways. Nice place you've landed in, Alina. Rich boyfriend taking care of you now? Is that what this is?" "I'm hanging up." "You hang up, and I'll call again. I'll keep calling. I'll make your life hell until you come back where you belong." "I'm not coming back. And you're violating the restraining order by calling me." Marcus laughed, cold and cruel. "That piece of paper doesn't scare me. You think some judge's signature is going to keep me away from my wife?" "Ex-wife. I've filed for divorce." The silence on the other end was deadly. Then, in a voice that made Alina's blood freeze, "You're making a very big mistake." "The only mistake I made was marrying you." "You think this new life is going to last? You think some criminal is going to protect you forever? He'll get bored. He'll throw you out like the trash you are. And when he does, I'll be waiting." "Stay away from me, Marcus. Or what? You'll have your boyfriend send his thugs after me? Try it. I'm not afraid of him or his money. Or—" Alina hung up. Her whole body was shaking. "Alina?" Sophia's small voice trembled. Who was that? No one important, sweetheart. Alina forced a smile. Go brush your teeth, okay? We need to leave for school soon. As soon as Sophia left the room, Alina called Victor. He answered on the first ring. He called me, she said without preamble. Marcus, I don't know how he got my number, but he called. What did he say? Alina repeated the conversation, her voice shaking. Victor was silent for a long moment. I'm coming home. Don't let the children go to school today. Keep them inside until I get there. Victor, you're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. If he has your number, he has more information than we thought. We need to reassess security. The line went quiet for a moment. Alina, this is important. Do not leave the house for any reason. Do not answer any calls from unknown numbers, and keep the children with you at all times. Okay? I'll be there in 20 minutes. Victor arrived in 15, bringing with him 3 additional security personnel and a man Alina didn't recognize, tall, heavy-set, with the kind of face that had seen violence and dealt it back. This is Thomas, Victor said. He's going to find out how your husband got your number and make sure it doesn't happen again. Thomas nodded at Alina. Ma'am, I'll need to see your phone. She handed it over, and Thomas disappeared into Victor's office. The children, confused about why they weren't going to school, gathered in the living room. Victor explained in terms they could understand that there was a security concern and everyone needed to stay inside today. Is it Alina's husband? Isabella asked bluntly. Victor didn't lie to his children. Yes. Is he dangerous? Potentially. Marco's eyes went wide behind his glasses. Are we in danger? No, this house is secure and I have the best security team in the city, but we're being careful. Victor's voice was firm, reassuring. Sometimes being careful means changing our routines for a day or two. Sophia climbed into Alina's lap. I don't like this. I know, baby, but we're safe. I promise. Thomas emerged from the office an hour later. Your phone's clean now. I've installed additional security and changed all the settings. But here's the problem. Your number was leaked by the phone company. Someone paid an employee to give them the information. Can we trace who? Victor asked. Already on it. But my guess? Your husband has connections. Not many, and not powerful, but enough to make a nuisance of himself. Victor's expression darkened. Then we cut off those connections? Over the next week, Alina watched Victor's world unfold in ways she'd only glimpsed before. Lawyers filed motions. Investigators dug into Marcus's background, finding debts, affairs, evidence of violence. Catherine built a case that was airtight, documenting years of abuse with medical records, witness statements, financial records that showed Marcus's control. And Marcus fought back the only way he knew how, with threats and manipulation and attempts to contact Alina that all violated the restraining order. Each violation was documented, each call, each showing up at the gate, each message relayed through third parties. Catherine collected them all like ammunition. He's building our case for us, she told Alina during one of their meetings. Every time he violates the order, he proves he's dangerous, that he can't be trusted, that you need protection. The prosecutor is already interested in filing criminal charges. How long until court? Alina asked. 2 months, maybe 3. These things move slowly, but trust me, we're building something he can't fight. In the meantime, life in the Moretti household found a new normal. The children adjusted to increased security, to not leaving the property without guards, to the tension that hummed through the house like a live wire. But they also drew closer to Alina. Sophia rarely left her side, sleeping in Alina's room most nights because the nightmares had gotten worse. Marco started showing her his writing, science fiction stories he'd been too shy to share before. And Isabella, prickly Isabella, started seeking Alina out when she needed to talk, sitting in the library together in comfortable silence, or actually having conversations about school, boys, the future. One night, 3 weeks after Marcus's phone call, Isabella appeared in Alina's doorway long after bedtime. Can I come in? She asked. Of course. Isabella sat on the edge of Alina's bed, picking at the comforter. For a long time, she didn't speak. I'm glad you're here, she finally said. I know I was awful to you at first. I'm sorry. You were protecting yourself. I understand that. Yeah, but you didn't deserve it. You were just trying to help. Isabella looked up, and in the dim light she looked so much younger than 13. My mom would have liked you. She always said the best people were the ones who'd been through hard things and came out kind anyway. Alina's throat tightened. Your mom sounds like she was very wise. She was, and she would have wanted us to take care of you, the way you're taking care of us. Isabella's voice wavered. So that's what we're doing, all of us. We're not going to let that man hurt you. Bella, I mean it. You're family now, and we protect family. Isabella left before Alina could respond, but she didn't need to. The message was clear. She wasn't alone anymore. She had people who would fight for her, stand with her, refuse to let her fall. And when Marcus's court date finally came, Alina would be ready. She had to be. The morning of the hearing arrived with unseasonable rain, dark clouds hanging over Chicago like a bruise. Alina stood in front of her bedroom mirror, adjusting the navy blue suit Catherine had helped her pick out. Conservative, professional, the kind of thing that said, credible victim to a judge. She hated it. Hated that she had to dress a certain way, speak a certain way, perform her trauma for strangers who would decide if she deserved freedom. But she'd do it. For herself. For the children who'd become her reason to keep fighting. A knock on her door made her turn. Victor stood there, dressed in one of his impeccable suits, his expression unreadable. Ready? He asked. No, but I don't think I ever will be, so we might as well go. Victor stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. Alina, I need you to understand something before we walk into that courtroom. No matter what he says, no matter what lies he tells, you are not the person he tried to make you believe you were. You are strong. You are worthy. And you deserve justice. Alina's eyes burned with unshed tears. What if the judge doesn't believe me? What if Marcus convinces them that I'm lying, that I'm trying to ruin him? Then we appeal. We fight harder. We don't stop until you're free. Victor's voice was steel. But that won't happen. Catherine has built an airtight case. The evidence is overwhelming. Trust the process. Downstairs, the children were waiting. Isabella stood stiff and formal in a dress Alina had never seen her wear, her usual armor of teenage indifference cracking to show genuine worry. Marco clutched a book like a talisman, his eyes huge behind his glasses. And Sophia, sweet Sophia, ran to Alina the moment she appeared. You look pretty, the little girl said, wrapping her arms around Alina's legs. Are you going to be okay? Alina knelt down, holding Sophia's small face in her hands. I'm going to be just fine. And when I come home, we'll have that tea party we planned, okay? With real cookies this time? With real cookies. Mrs. Chen appeared with a thermos of coffee and a concerned smile. You eat something this morning? I tried. Alina had managed half a piece of toast before her stomach rebelled. Here, Mrs. Chen pressed a granola bar into her hand. Eat it in the car. You need your strength. The drive to the courthouse was silent except for the rhythmic swish of windshield wipers. Alina stared out the window at the gray city, her mother's ring heavy on her finger. She'd worn it deliberately, a reminder of love that didn't hurt, of a woman who taught her that strength came in many forms. Catherine met them at the courthouse entrance, somehow looking perfectly dry despite the downpour, her expression all business. He's already inside with his lawyer, she said without preamble. Martin Crease. He's a bottom feeder who specializes in making victims look like villains. Don't let him rattle you. Easy for you to say, Alina muttered. Catherine's expression softened slightly. I know it's not easy, but remember, the truth is on your side, and I'm very good at my job. The courthouse was old, all marble and echoing hallways that made Alina feel small. People rushed past, lawyers with briefcases, defendants in handcuffs, families clustered in worried groups. The justice system grinding forward, indifferent to individual suffering. They rode the elevator to the third floor in silence. When the doors opened, Alina saw him. Marcus stood at the end of the hallway, talking to a man in a cheap suit who must be his lawyer. He looked the same, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of conventional handsomeness that had first attracted her when she was young and stupid. But now she could see the cruelty in the set of his mouth, the calculation in his eyes. He saw her at the same moment. Something dark crossed his face, and he started toward her. Victor moved instantly, positioning himself between Alina and her husband. That's close enough. Marcus stopped, his hands clenching into fists. You must be the boyfriend, the rich asshole who thinks he can steal another man's wife. I'm the man keeping her safe from you. That's all you need to know. Safe? Marcus laughed, bitter and sharp. Is that what she told you? That she needs protecting from Big Bad Marcus? Let me guess, she cried, played the victim, made you feel like a hero for saving her? Save it for the judge, Catherine said coldly. And if you come within 500 feet of my client again, I'll have you arrested for violating the restraining order. Marcus's lawyer, Crease, put a hand on his client's arm. Let's go inside, Marcus. Don't give them ammunition. But Marcus shook him off, his eyes locked on Alina. You're going to regret this. You think you can humiliate me, drag my name through the mud, destroy everything we built together? I'll see you homeless on the street before I let you win. We had nothing together, Alina heard herself say, her voice steadier than she felt. All we had was you hurting me and me too scared to leave. You're a liar. Then prove it in court. Alina lifted her chin, meeting his eyes directly for the first time in years. Show the judge your evidence. Explain the hospital records, the witnesses, the financial abuse. Go ahead. I'll wait. Something flickered in Marcus's expression. Uncertainty maybe, or fear. Because he didn't have evidence. Abusers never did. They relied on power, on intimidation, on their victims being too broken to fight back. But Alina wasn't broken anymore. A bailiff appeared. Hayes versus Hayes? Judge Morrison is ready for you. The courtroom was smaller than Alina expected, more intimate. Wood paneling, a raised bench where the judge would sit, tables for the lawyers, a few rows of seats for observers. Victor sat in the front row directly behind where Alina would be, a silent presence she could feel even without looking. Judge Morrison entered, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Everyone stood, then sat again at her gesture. This is a hearing for a restraining order and preliminary proceedings for divorce in the matter of Hayes versus Hayes, the judge said, her voice carrying authority. Ms. Reeves, you're representing the petitioner? Catherine stood. Yes, Your Honor. And Mr. Crease for the respondent? Marcus's lawyer stood as well. That's correct, Your Honor. Before we begin, I want to make something clear. This is a court of law, not a circus. I expect professional behavior from counsel and appropriate conduct from all parties. Any violation will result in sanctions. Are we understood? Both lawyers nodded. Good. Ms. Reeves, present your case. What followed was 2 hours of the most excruciating testimony Alina had ever experienced. Catherine walked her through her marriage methodically, how they met, when the abuse started, specific incidents documented with dates and details. Medical records were entered into evidence showing the cracked rib, the concussion. Marcus claimed was from Alina being clumsy, bruises photographed by emergency room staff. Financial records showed Marcus had complete control of all accounts, that Alina had no access to money, no credit cards in her name, nothing. Ms. Hayes, Catherine said gently, can you describe for the court what would happen if you tried to access money without your husband's permission? Alina's hands clenched in her lap. He would. He'd get angry. The first time I tried to get my own bank account, he found out and She swallowed hard. He locked me in our bedroom for 3 days, said I needed to learn my place. Objection! Crease jumped up. Hearsay and speculation. There's no evidence this alleged incident ever occurred. It's the petitioner's own testimony about her experience, Your Honor, Catherine countered. That's not hearsay. Overruled. Continue, Ms. Hayes. Alina described the isolation, how Marcus had systematically cut her off from friends and family, monitored her phone calls, tracked her movements, how he'd convinced her over 2 years that she was worthless, that no one would believe her, that she deserved everything he did to her. And why didn't you leave sooner? Judge Morrison asked, her tone neutral. It was the question everyone always asked, the one that put the burden on the victim instead of the abuser. Because I was afraid, Alina said quietly. Because he told me he'd kill me if I tried. Because I had nowhere to go and no money, and I believed him when he said I was nothing without him. What changed? Alina thought about that frozen night, about Victor's hand reaching through the darkness, about 3 children who'd taught her that love didn't have to hurt. I almost died. And when I survived, I realized that anything was better than going back to him. Even death on a street corner was better than one more day being his victim. The words hung in the courtroom, stark and true. Then it was Crease's turn. He stood, smoothing his cheap suit, and gave Alina a smile that made her skin crawl. Ms. Hayes, you testified that my client was abusive, controlling, violent. Is that correct? Yes. And yet you stayed with him for 2 years after the abuse allegedly began? Yes. Why would a rational person stay in such a situation? Catherine started to object, but Alina spoke first. Because abuse destroys your rationality. It makes you believe you deserve it, that it's your fault, that there's no way out. Or, Crease said, his tone suggesting reasonableness, because the abuse didn't actually happen, and this is a fabrication designed to punish my client for a failed marriage. That's not true. Isn't it? You left my client, moved in with a wealthy man, and now you're trying to take half of everything my client worked for while painting him as a monster. Sounds convenient. Objection, Catherine said sharply. Counsel is testifying, not questioning. Sustained. Mr. Crease, ask questions. Don't make speeches. Crease nodded, but the damage was done. He'd planted the seed that Alina was a gold digger, a liar, someone trying to profit from false accusations. Ms. Hayes, you claim my client controlled your finances, but you had access to a joint account, correct? Technically, yes, but yes or no, please. Yes. And you could have withdrawn money at any time? He monitored every transaction. If I spent anything without permission, there were consequences. But you could have withdrawn money and left. Alina's jaw clenched. It's not that simple. It seems quite simple to me. You had access to money. You could have left at any time. Instead, you stayed, and now you're claiming abuse to justify abandoning your marriage vows. That's not what happened. No? Then tell me, Ms. Hayes, where were you on the night of February 14th this year? Alina blinked at the sudden change in direction. I was on the street. My husband had thrown me out. Because you failed to give him a child, according to your testimony? Yes. And isn't it true that you had multiple affairs during your marriage, that your inability to conceive might have been due to those affairs, and that my client discovered your infidelity and asked you to leave? What? No, that's a complete lie. Objection! Catherine was on her feet. Counsel has presented no evidence to support these allegations. Mr. Crease? Judge Morrison's voice was ice. Your Honor, I have testimony from witnesses who will attest to Ms. Hayes's extramarital activities. Then you should have disclosed those witnesses in discovery. Do you have them here today? Crease hesitated. Not today, Your Honor, but then these accusations are inappropriate and will be stricken from the record. Ms. Reeves, redirect? Catherine approached Alina, her expression professionally sympathetic. Ms. Hayes, did you have any affairs during your marriage? No, never. Did you have male friends, colleagues, anyone your husband might have misinterpreted as romantic involvement? No, Marcus didn't allow me to have friends of any gender. I was isolated completely. And the accusation you just heard, how does it make you feel? Alina looked at Marcus, who sat at his table with a smug expression, confident that his lies would work the way they always had. It makes me feel exactly the way he wanted me to feel for 2 years. Small, powerless, like my truth doesn't matter. But the difference is, I'm not that woman anymore. Catherine sat down, and Judge Morrison called for a recess. Alina stumbled out of the courtroom, her legs barely holding her up. Victor caught her arm, steadying her. You did well, he said quietly. He lied. He just stood up in court and lied. Of course he did. That's what men like him do. Victor guided her to a bench. But the judge saw through it. Did you see her face when Crease couldn't produce his witnesses? She knows he's lying. Catherine joined them, her expression grim. He's going to keep throwing mud, hoping something sticks. But we have the evidence. Medical records don't lie. Financial documents don't lie. And frankly, his lawyer is incompetent. He just committed a major ethical violation by making accusations without evidence. What happens now? Alina asked. Now we present our witnesses. I have Mrs. Patterson, your old neighbor, on standby, plus the doctor who treated your cracked rib, and a forensic accountant who's going to tear apart his claim that you had equal access to money. The afternoon session was brutal. Mrs. Patterson testified that she'd seen Alina with bruises on multiple occasions, that she'd heard screaming through the walls, that she'd once called police for a wellness check only to have Marcus answer the door and claim everything was fine. Dr. Santos, who'd treated Alina that first night at Victor's house, testified about the extent of malnutrition and injuries she'd observed, injuries consistent with prolonged abuse. And the forensic accountant systematically destroyed Marcus's claims, showing bank records where every single transaction was monitored, where Alina had no credit cards, no access codes, nothing that would have allowed her to leave. Kreese tried to fight back, but he was outmatched and he knew it. His cross-examinations were weak, his objections overruled more often than sustained. Marcus sat at his table, his face growing redder, his hands clenching and unclenching as he watched his lies crumble. Finally, Judge Morrison called both lawyers to the bench. They spoke in whispers Alina couldn't hear, but she could read Catherine's body language, confident, firm, winning. When they returned to their tables, the judge addressed the courtroom. I've heard enough testimony today to make preliminary rulings. First, the restraining order will remain in place and is hereby extended indefinitely. Mr. Hayes is to have no contact with Ms. Hayes through any means, phone, email, social media, third parties, or in person. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. Marcus half stood. Your Honor, that's... Sit down, Mr. Hayes, or I'll have you removed from my courtroom. Judge Morrison's voice could have frozen water. Second, I'm granting Ms. Hayes' petition for divorce. This case will proceed to trial, where we will address asset division and any criminal charges that may arise from the evidence presented today. Criminal charges? Kreese sputtered. I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office for review. The evidence of domestic violence is substantial, and it's not my place to decide if criminal prosecution is warranted, but I believe it merits investigation. The judge looked directly at Marcus. Mr. Hayes, I want to be very clear. The testimony I heard today paints a picture of systematic abuse, control, and violence. If even half of what was presented is true, and I believe substantially more than half is true, you should be ashamed of yourself. Marcus's face went purple with rage, but he said nothing. We'll reconvene in 60 days for the divorce proceedings. Until then, the restraining order stands. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell like a judge's hammer on Marcus's lies. Alina felt her knees give out. Victor caught her, holding her steady as relief crashed through her in waves. It wasn't over. The divorce would take months. The criminal investigation could take longer. But she'd won this battle. The judge believed her. The evidence had stood. Marcus had finally been held accountable. Catherine gathered her papers, satisfaction clear on her face. That went better than I expected. Judge Morrison is tough but fair, and she clearly saw through his act. What about the criminal charges? Alina asked. That's up to the DA's office. They'll review the evidence and decide if there's enough for prosecution. But regardless, the restraining order is permanent. He can't touch you, Alina. Legally, he can't even speak your name. They left through a side exit to avoid reporters. Apparently, domestic violence cases involving potential criminal charges attracted media attention. The SUV was waiting, Thomas at the wheel, another guard in the passenger seat. Alina sank into the leather seat and closed her eyes, exhaustion hitting her like a physical force. You should be proud, Victor said quietly. What you did today took immense courage. It didn't feel courageous. It felt necessary. That's what courage is. Doing what must be done even when you're terrified. The drive home was quiet, rain still falling in sheets. When they pulled through the gates of the estate, Alina felt herself start to breathe again. Safe. She was safe. The front door flew open before they reached it, and 3 children spilled out despite the rain. You're back! Sophia launched herself at Alina, getting both of them soaked. Did you win? Did the judge say you could stay with us? Alina laughed, the sound surprising her. Yes, sweetheart, I can stay. Marco hovered nearby, his relief obvious even through his usual reserve. So he can't come here? He can't bother you? No. The judge said he has to stay away from me, forever. Good. Isabella's voice was fierce. Because if he didn't, I was going to have to do something about it myself. Victor's hand landed on his daughter's shoulder. No, you weren't. But I appreciate the sentiment. They went inside, dripping water on the marble floors. Mrs. Chen appeared with towels and hot chocolate, and a warmth in her eyes that spoke louder than words. That night, after the children were in bed and the house had settled into quiet, Alina found herself back in the library. She picked up the book she'd been reading weeks ago, before everything exploded, and tried to focus on the words. She couldn't. Her mind kept replaying the courtroom, Marcus's lies, the judge's verdict. She'd won. She was free. But the weight of it all sat heavy on her chest. Can't sleep? Alina looked up to find Victor in the doorway, 2 glasses of whiskey in his hands. He offered her one. "I don't really drink," she said. "Tonight you should." She took the glass, and they sat in comfortable silence, the only sound the rain against the windows and the occasional crackle from the fireplace someone had lit. "Thank you," Alina said finally, "for everything. The lawyers, the security, the protection. I could never have done this without you." "Yes, you could have. It would have been harder, taken longer, but you would have found a way. That's who you are." "You don't know that." "I do." Victor's eyes met hers over his glass. "You survived Marcus. You survived the streets. You chose to live when dying would have been easier. That's not weakness, Alina. That's the strongest thing I've ever seen." Alina felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't feel strong." "Strength isn't about feeling strong. It's about keeping going when you feel weak." They sat in silence for a while longer, drinking whiskey that burned warm and grounding. Outside, the storm raged, but inside, Alina felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. The next morning, Alina woke to find Sophia curled up next to her in bed, Mr. Hoppy clutched in her small arms. The little girl must have crept in during the night, seeking comfort or offering it. Alina wasn't sure which. She brushed hair from Sophia's forehead gently, watching her sleep. This child who'd lost her mother, who had nightmares and fears, and a hole in her heart that nothing could completely fill, but who still loved fiercely, trusted deeply, and believed in happy endings. Alina wanted to be worthy of that trust. Downstairs, she found Catherine's name on the caller ID of her phone, along with a voicemail. She listened to it while making coffee, her heart rate picking up. "Alina, it's Catherine. Good news. The DA's office has decided to pursue charges against your ex-husband. Domestic battery, false imprisonment, and financial abuse. The case will go to trial in about 6 months. I know it's not over yet, but this is significant. Call me when you get this." Alina set the phone down carefully, her hands shaking. Criminal charges. Marcus could go to prison. Not just lose in divorce court, not just be forbidden from contacting her, actually face consequences for what he'd done. The front door opened and Victor came in from his morning run, sweaty and breathing hard. He stopped when he saw her expression. "What happened?" "The DA is filing criminal charges. Battery, false imprisonment, financial abuse." Victor's face showed no surprise, only satisfaction. "Good. It's about time. He could go to prison. He should go to prison. What he did to you was criminal. Now the law is finally recognizing that." Alina sank into a kitchen chair. "I should feel happy, relieved, but I just feel tired." Victor poured himself water from the sink. "That's normal. You've been fighting for weeks, living on adrenaline and fear. Now that the immediate threat has passed, the exhaustion catches up." He leaned against the counter. "Take today for yourself. Rest. The children are in school. I have meetings, but nothing urgent. Just breathe." It sounded simple. It wasn't, but Alina tried. She took a long bath, read in the library, helped Mrs. Chen with dinner prep just because it was soothing to chop vegetables, and listened to the older woman's stories about her grandchildren. When the children came home from school, normalcy returned. Homework and snacks and Sophia's endless chatter about a boy in her class who could burp the alphabet. Marco showing Alina a drawing he'd made in art class, a surprisingly good sketch of the gardens. Isabella actually asking for help with her English essay, though she framed it as, "You're not busy, so you might as well." At dinner, Victor made an announcement. "I think we should take a trip. Nothing far, maybe the lake house for a long weekend. Get away from the city. Let everyone decompress." "Can we go swimming?" Sophia asked immediately. "It's March, Piccola. The lake is still freezing." "But the house has an indoor pool, right?" Victor smiled. "Yes, it has an indoor pool." "Then I vote yes." Sophia looked around the table. Everyone else? Marco nodded enthusiastically. Even Isabella looked interested, though she tried to hide it. Alina, Victor asked, what do you think? Alina realized he was asking her opinion not as staff, not as the nanny, but as part of the family, equal in the decision. I think it sounds perfect, she said. They left Friday after school, driving north through Illinois into Wisconsin, where Victor owned a house on Lake Geneva. The drive took 2 hours, filled with Sophia's excited chatter, Marco's gaming sounds from his handheld device, and Isabella's carefully curated playlist that somehow managed to satisfy everyone. The lake house was beautiful, smaller than the Chicago estate, but still luxurious, all windows and modern architecture designed to showcase the water views. There was a dock, a boathouse, and yes, an indoor pool that made Sophia squeal with delight. That weekend was the first time in months that Alina felt like she could truly breathe. They swam and played board games and cooked together in a kitchen that felt warm and lived in rather than formal. Victor relaxed in ways she'd never seen, actually laughing at Marco's terrible jokes and letting Sophia paint his nails bright pink. On Saturday night, after the children were asleep, Alina and Victor sat on the deck overlooking the dark lake, wrapped in blankets against the cold. Thank you for this, Alina said. I didn't realize how much I needed to get away. We all needed it. The past few weeks have been intense. Do you think it's really over with Marcus? The legal battle isn't over, but the immediate danger is. Victor was quiet for a moment. Alina, I need to tell you something about my wife, about how she died. Alina turned to look at him, surprised. He'd avoided the topic carefully for weeks. You don't have to. I want to. Victor's jaw tightened. Elena died because of me. Because of my work, my enemies, my life. Someone wanted to hurt me, so they killed her. Made it look like an accident, carbon monoxide leak, but I know the truth. Alina's breath caught. Victor, I couldn't protect her, couldn't save her. And I've spent 2 years trying to protect our children from the same fate, building walls and hiring security and isolating us from the world. He looked at her. And then you appeared. This woman I couldn't save but could give a second chance. And watching you fight, watching you refuse to be a victim anymore, it reminded me that survival isn't just about walls and guards. It's about choosing to live despite the danger. I'm not sure I'm the best example of choosing to live. I was literally dying when you found me. But you took my hand. You got in the car. You're still here, still fighting. That's choosing life, Alina. They sat in silence, the weight of shared trauma settling between them like understanding. I'm afraid, Alina admitted, that this is temporary, that I'll wake up and be back on that sidewalk or back with Marcus, and all of this will have been a dream. It's not a dream, and you're not going anywhere. Victor's voice was firm. You're part of this family now, legally, emotionally, in every way that matters. The children need you. He stopped, something vulnerable crossing his face. We all need you. The words hung in the cold night air, meaning more than they said. Alina pulled her blanket tighter, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. This man who'd saved her, who'd given her purpose and protection and a reason to keep breathing, he needed her too. I need you all just as much, she whispered. The weekend ended too soon. They drove back to Chicago on Sunday evening, the children tired and happy, already asking when they could go back. Life resumed its rhythm, school and homework and dinner together. Catherine called regularly with updates on the legal proceedings. The DA's office scheduled Marcus's trial for August, giving Alina months to prepare. But something had shifted at the lake house. The family that had been forming felt more solid now, more real. Alina wasn't just the nanny anymore. She was Alina, the person who helped Isabella with her college essays, who taught Marco to cook his favorite pasta, who had tea parties with Sophia and actually drank the imaginary tea with convincing appreciation. And with Victor, there was something else growing, something neither of them named but both felt in the quiet moments. Late-night conversations in the kitchen, the way his hand would linger on her shoulder when he checked on her, the careful distance he maintained that spoke of awareness rather than indifference. Spring arrived properly, melting the last of the winter ice. The gardens bloomed, and Sophia insisted on picking flowers for the house every day. The The children's birthdays came. Marco turning 11, then Sophia turning 6. Celebrations with cakes and presents and the kind of joy Alina had forgotten existed. And through it all, Marcus's trial loomed like a storm cloud on the horizon. When August finally arrived, Alina was as ready as she'd ever be. She walked into that courtroom with her head high, Victor beside her, the children at home, but sending her strength through distance. She testified again, this time in front of a jury. She let them see the medical records, hear the witnesses, understand the systematic way Marcus had broken her down. The trial lasted 2 weeks. 2 weeks of Marcus's lawyer trying to paint her as a liar, a gold digger, a vindictive ex-wife. 2 weeks of Catherine systematically destroying every lie with evidence and testimony and unshakable facts. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the 4 women stood and read the verdict. On the charge of domestic battery, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of false imprisonment, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of financial abuse, we find the defendant guilty. Guilty, guilty, guilty. The words echoed through the courtroom like absolution. Marcus was sentenced to 5 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 3. Not enough, maybe, for 2 years of torture, but enough to know that he'd finally faced consequences, that his lies hadn't worked, that Alina's truth had mattered. She walked out of that courtroom a free woman in every sense of the word. And when she got home, 3 children and their father were waiting to celebrate not just a legal victory, but the beginning of something new. The house was lit up like a festival when Alina returned from the courthouse. Streamers hung from the chandelier, Sophia's handiwork, no doubt. And the dining room table was covered with food that Mrs. Chen must have been preparing all day. The children stood in a line, dressed up like they were attending something important, and when Alina walked through the door, they erupted. "You won!" Sophia launched herself forward, nearly knocking Alina over. "Daddy called and said you won, and the bad man has to go to jail forever." "Not forever," Alina said, catching the little girl and holding her tight. "But for a long time." Marco approached more cautiously, but his smile was genuine. "We made you a cake. Well, Mrs. Chen made it, but we decorated it." The cake sat on the counter, slightly lopsided, with "Congratulations, Alina," written in frosting that had clearly been applied by multiple hands with varying levels of skill. "It's perfect," Alina said, her throat tight with emotion. Isabella hung back, arms crossed, but her eyes were bright. "I told you we'd protect you, all of us together. You did. And I'll never forget that." Victor appeared from his office, still in the suit he'd worn to court, and something passed between them. Understanding, gratitude, something deeper that neither was quite ready to name. "Dinner first," he announced, "then cake. Then Sophia can show Alina the present she's been working on all week." The meal was chaotic and loud and filled with laughter. Sophia chattered about her day at school, about the butterflies she'd drawn that now had a family of butterflies, about how Mr. Hoppy said he was proud of Alina. Marco talked about his science project, something involving volcanoes and chemical reactions that went over Alina's head but clearly excited him. Even Isabella participated, telling a story about a boy in her class who tried to cheat off her test and how she'd deliberately given wrong answers until the teacher moved him. "That's diabolical," Victor said, but he was smiling. "I learned from the best," Isabella replied, which made Victor's smile falter slightly before he recovered. After dinner and cake, chocolate with vanilla frosting, delicious, despite its crooked appearance, Sophia dragged Alina upstairs to her room. "Close your eyes," the little girl commanded. Alina obeyed, letting Sophia guide her into the room. She heard rustling, whispered counting, then Sophia's excited voice. "Okay, open!" Alina opened her eyes to find Sophia holding a drawing. It showed 5 stick figures, 3 small, 2 tall, standing in front of a house. The figures held hands, and above them, the sun smiled down. In careful 6-year-old handwriting, the title read, "My Family." "That's you," Sophia pointed to the second tallest figure, who had yellow hair like Alina's. "And that's Daddy, and that's me, and Marco, and Bella. We're all together because we're a family now." Alina knelt down, her vision blurring with tears. "Sophia, this is the most beautiful thing anyone's ever given me." "Really?" "Really." Sophia threw her arms around Alina's neck. I'm glad you came to live with us. I'm glad you didn't die on that cold night. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. After tucking Sophia in with Mr. Hoppy and reading 3 bedtime stories instead of the usual one, Alina found Marco in his room, pretending to do homework but clearly waiting for her. "Hey," she said from the doorway. "Can I come in?" "Sure." Marco closed his textbook. "Today was good, right? The verdict?" "It was very good." "I'm glad. You deserve to be happy." Marco picked at a loose thread on his bedspread. "You know, when you first came here, I didn't think you'd stay. Nobody ever stays." "I'm not nobody. I know that now." Marco looked up, and behind his glasses, his eyes were serious. "Your family. That's different." Alina crossed the room and hugged him, this quiet boy who'd let her into his world slowly, carefully, 1 page of writing at a time. "You're my family too, Marco. All of you." Isabella was in the library, as Alina had known she would be. The teenage girl sat in what had become her chair, a book open in her lap, but she wasn't reading. She was staring out the window at the dark gardens, lost in thought. "Mind if I join you?" Alina asked. Isabella shrugged. "It's a free country." Alina settled into her own chair, the one where she'd first sat with Isabella all those months ago, and for a while they just existed in comfortable silence. "My mom would have liked you," Isabella said suddenly. "She would have been happy that you're here." Alina's breath caught. "That means everything to me, Bella." "Don't call me that. Only my family calls me that." Isabella paused, then added, "Which I guess means you can call me that, if you want." "I'd like that very much." Isabella closed her book and met Alina's eyes directly. "I was scared, you know, when you first came. I thought if I let myself care about you, you'd leave like everyone else, like my mom did, even though she didn't want to. I thought it was safer to push you away. But you didn't, not in the end. Because you didn't leave when I was awful to you. You just stayed, even when I gave you every reason not to." Isabella's voice wavered. "So I'm asking you now, officially, please keep staying. Please don't go." Alina crossed the space between them and pulled Isabella into a hug. The girl stiffened for a moment, then collapsed into it, her carefully constructed walls finally coming down completely. "I'm not going anywhere," Alina promised. "You're stuck with me, Bella. Forever." "Good," Isabella whispered against her shoulder. "Because we need you." When Alina finally made it back downstairs, exhausted but full in a way she'd never been before, she found Victor waiting in the kitchen with 2 glasses of wine. "I thought you could use this after your day," he said, offering her a glass. They moved to the living room, settling onto the couch in front of the fireplace. Outside, the Chicago night sparkled with city lights, but inside everything was warm and safe. "The children really love you," Victor said after a moment. "I don't think I've seen them this happy since before Elena died." "I love them too. They saved my life as much as I helped theirs." "No, you saved yourself. We just gave you a safe place to do it." Alina took a sip of wine, gathering her courage for what she wanted to say next. "Victor, what happens now? With everything? The trial's over, Marcus is in prison, my divorce is final. I'm technically free to go anywhere, do anything. But this job, being a nanny, is that still what I am here?" Victor set his glass down carefully. "Is that what you want? To be just the nanny?" "I don't know what I want. Or maybe I do, and I'm just afraid to say it." "Then let me say it first." Victor turned to face her fully, his dark eyes intense. "When I found you on that sidewalk, I saw someone who reminded me of myself, lost, broken, ready to give up. I thought I was saving you, but the truth is you saved me too. You brought light back into this house, gave my children something to believe in again, showed me that life could be more than just surviving." Alina's heart pounded in her chest. "Victor, let me finish. These past months, watching you heal, watching you fight, watching you become part of this family, somewhere along the way, you stopped being just the woman I rescued and became someone I can't imagine living without. And I know it's complicated. I know the power dynamic is strange. I know I'm your employer and you might feel obligated, but I love you," Alina interrupted, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "I love you and I love your children and I love this life we've built together, Not because you saved me or because I feel obligated, but because you're good and kind and you see me, really see me, and make me want to be brave enough to deserve it. Victor stared at her for a long moment. Then he smiled, really smiled, in a way she'd never seen before. I love you too, Alina. I have for a while now. I was just afraid to say it, afraid it would scare you away or make you think I had ulterior motives. The only thing that scares me is the thought of losing this, of losing you and the children and this family we've become. Then don't lose it. Stay. Not as an employee, not as someone who owes me anything, but as someone who chooses to be here, as someone who belongs. Alina set her wine glass down and took Victor's hands in hers. I choose this. I choose you. I choose all of it. Victor leaned forward, hesitating just before their lips met, giving her one last chance to pull away. But Alina closed the distance, kissing him with all the emotion she'd been holding back for months. Gratitude and love and hope and the bone-deep relief of finally being seen, being chosen, being home. When they finally pulled apart, Victor rested his forehead against hers. The children are going to be insufferable about this. You know that, right? Alina laughed. Sophia's probably already planning the wedding. She drew pictures of you in a white dress last week. I saw them on her desk. Of course she did. They sat together for a long time, talking about the future in ways that felt both terrifying and exciting. About what it meant for Alina to be not just the nanny, but Victor's partner. About how to navigate that transition with the children. About the life they could build together. I want to adopt them, Alina said suddenly. Eventually. Not right away, but I want to be their mother, legally, if they want that. If you want that. Victor's expression softened with something that looked like wonder. Elena would have wanted that. She would have wanted them to have a mother who loves them the way you do. And yes, I want that. More than I can say. The next morning, Alina woke to find all three children piled into her bed. Sophia between her and the wall, Marco at the foot, and Isabella sprawled across the middle like a starfish. They were all still asleep, peaceful in the early morning light. Victor appeared in the doorway, coffee in hand, and took a picture on his phone before Alina could protest. For posterity, he whispered. One by one, the children woke. Sophia immediately demanded a family breakfast, which turned into a chaotic affair with everyone trying to cook something different at the same time. They ended up with pancakes, bacon, scrambled eggs, fruit salad, and toast, enough food for twice their number. As they ate, Isabella suddenly announced, "So, are you two together now, or are we supposed to pretend we don't notice?" Marco choked on his orange juice. Sophia's eyes went wide. "Bella," Victor said warningly. "What? I'm just asking what we're all thinking." Alina and Victor exchanged glances. They'd planned to have a more formal conversation with the children to ease into it carefully. But apparently Isabella had other ideas. "Yes," Alina said simply. "We're together, if that's okay with all of you." "Finally!" Sophia threw her hands in the air. "I've been waiting forever. Can I be the flower girl?" "Flower girl for what?" Marco asked. "The wedding, dummy!" "We're not getting married tomorrow, Piccola," Victor said, but he was smiling. "But eventually?" Sophia pressed. Victor looked at Alina, his eyes soft. "Eventually." Marco nodded thoughtfully. "That's good. I like Alina. And you've been happier since she came here, Dad." "We all have," Isabella added. Then, more quietly, "Mom would have wanted you to be happy again." The table went quiet, the weight of Elena's absence suddenly present. But it wasn't a sad quiet. It was acknowledgement, respect, permission to move forward while still honoring the past. "Your mother was an extraordinary woman," Alina said carefully, "and I could never replace her. I'm not trying to. But I promise to love you all with everything I have, and to honor her memory by taking care of the family she loved so much." Isabella's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "That's all we want, for someone to love us and stay." "Then that's what you'll have. I promise." The weeks that followed were a period of adjustment and joy. Alina officially moved into Victor's room, though she kept her own space for when she needed solitude. The children took their relationship in stride, having apparently seen it coming long before the adults did. Catherine called with the final divorce papers. Alina was legally free, her maiden name restored if she wanted it. She chose to keep Hayes for now, not ready to take back a past that no longer fit, but not yet sure what came next. "You could be Alina Moretti," Sophia suggested one evening during tea party. "Then we'd all match." "Maybe someday," Alina said, which made Sophia squeal with delight. Fall arrived, bringing with it new routines. Isabella started her freshman year of high school, nervous in ways she'd never admit. Marco joined the robotics club and discovered a passion for engineering. Sophia began first grade and came home every day with stories about her new best friend Emma and their adventures at recess. And Alina? Alina enrolled in community college, taking business classes with the vague idea of maybe, someday, helping Victor with his legitimate businesses. She'd spent so many years with no education, no prospects, that having the chance to learn felt like a gift. Victor supported every decision, every dream, every step forward she wanted to take. He was patient and kind and occasionally overprotective, but always respectful of her autonomy. "You're not the woman I rescued anymore," he told her one night. "You're the woman who chose to stay and build something beautiful. That's so much better." 6 months after the trial, on a crisp November evening, Victor asked Alina to take a walk with him in the gardens. The children were inside with Mrs. Chen, supposedly doing homework, but probably watching television. The gardens were beautiful in fall, all golden leaves and the last stubborn flowers clinging to life before winter. They walked in comfortable silence until they reached the fountain, currently running, water sparkling in the setting sun. "I have something for you," Victor said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Alina's breath caught. "Victor, before you panic, this isn't what you think. Not yet, anyway." He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver bracelet with 5 charms. 3 small hearts, 1 slightly larger heart, and a single star. "The children helped me pick it out," Victor explained. "The small hearts are for them, the larger one is for me, and the star, that's for you, because you're the light that brought us all together." Alina felt tears spill down her cheeks as Victor fastened the bracelet around her wrist. "It's perfect. There's room for more charms. For the moments we'll share, the memories we'll make. I wanted you to have something that showed you belong to this family, even before we make it official." "Before we make it official?" Victor took her hands in his. "I know it's too soon. I know you need time to be free, to figure out who you are outside of trauma and survival. But someday when you're ready, I'm going to ask you to marry me, and I really hope, you'll say yes." "Yes," Alina said immediately. Victor blinked. "Yes? Yes, I'll marry you. Not someday. Now. Soon. Whenever you want." Alina laughed at his shocked expression. "I spent years being afraid to want things, to hope for happiness. I'm done waiting. I love you. I love your children. I love this life. Why would I wait to make it official?" "Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything." Victor pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was something precious. "Then yes, let's get married. Let's be a family in every way that matters." They told the children that night. Sophia screamed so loud the security guards came running. Marco grinned and immediately started planning what he'd say in his best man speech. Isabella hugged them both and whispered, "Thank you for giving us a family again." The wedding was small, held in the gardens on a mild December afternoon. No big production, no society spectacle, just the people who mattered most. Catherine attended, as did Mrs. Chen and Thomas, and a few others who'd become important in their lives. The children stood with them, Sophia tossing flower petals with enthusiastic abandon, Marco and Isabella flanking them like guardians. Alina wore a simple white dress, her mother's ring on a chain around her neck, and the bracelet Victor had given her on her wrist. She carried a bouquet of winter roses that Sophia had helped pick out. Victor wore a suit that made him look like he'd stepped out of a magazine, but it was his expression that took Alina's breath away. Pure love, pure joy, pure certainty. The ceremony was short, officiated by a judge who owed Victor a favor and asked no questions about the quickness of it all. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promising love and partnership and the courage to keep choosing each other every day. When the judge pronounced them married, Sophia cheered and Marco wiped away tears he pretended weren't there, and Isabella smiled with something that looked like peace. Alina kissed her husband, and thought about the night she'd almost died on a frozen sidewalk. How impossible all of this would have seemed then, How far she'd come from that broken woman with nothing left to lose. She'd lost everything and found something better. A family who chose her, children who loved her, a man who saw her strength when she couldn't see it herself. The reception was held in the dining room, with food Mrs. Chen had been secretly preparing for weeks. They danced, Alina and Victor first, then everyone joining in, even the children. Sophia stood on Victor's feet while he waltzed her around. Marco slow danced awkwardly with Isabella, both of them laughing. And Alina danced with each of her new children, holding them close, promising silently to protect them the way they'd protected her. Later, after the guests had left and the children were asleep, Alina and Victor stood in the library, the place where so much of their story had unfolded, and looked at the family portrait someone had taken during the reception. 5 people, 5 smiles, 1 family. "Do you ever think about that night?" Victor asked quietly. "The night I found you?" "Every day," Alina admitted. "I think about how close I came to giving up, how easy it would have been to just let go. I'm glad you didn't." "So am I." Alina leaned into him, safe and warm and loved. "I used to think strength meant never breaking, but I was wrong. Strength is breaking completely and choosing to put yourself back together. It's accepting help when you need it. It's believing you deserve good things even when life's taught you otherwise." "You deserve every good thing, Alina Moretti." The name still felt strange, but good, like trying on a new identity that actually fit. "We deserve this," she corrected. "All of us. After everything we've been through, we deserve happiness." Victor kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "Then let's be happy. Starting now." And they were. Not perfectly. Life was never perfect. There were hard days and arguments and moments when the past reared up unexpectedly. Isabella still had nightmares about losing her mother. Marco struggled with anxiety. Sophia occasionally regressed, needing extra reassurance that everyone she loved was safe. And Alina herself still had days when she woke up expecting to find herself back in that nightmare, when loud noises made her flinch, when she had to remind herself that she was allowed to take up space and have opinions and exist without permission. But they faced it all together, as a family, as people who'd chosen each other not despite their brokenness but because of it, because they understood that everyone has scars, and the real strength is in showing them to people who won't use them as weapons. 3 years after that frozen February night, Alina sat in the same library where she'd first connected with Isabella, watching her oldest daughter, because that's what Isabella was now, legally and in every way that mattered, work on college applications. "Read this one," Isabella said, turning her laptop around. "Tell me if it's too much." Alina read the essay, a beautiful, raw piece about loss and healing and finding family in unexpected places, about a woman who'd arrived broken and stayed to help piece everyone else together, and in doing so had healed herself. "It's perfect," Alina said, her voice thick with emotion. "Your mom would be so proud of you." "Both of them," Isabella corrected. "Both my moms would be proud." The words hit Alina square in the chest. Both my moms. She'd never asked the children to call her mom, never wanted to replace Elena. But slowly, naturally, it had happened anyway. Sophia had started first, then Marco, and finally Isabella, the hardest one and therefore the most precious. That night, the whole family gathered for dinner as they did every evening, no matter how busy everyone was. It was their ritual, their anchor. Marco talked about his robotics competition. Sophia showed off a spelling test with a perfect score. Isabella debated between colleges, Harvard or Yale or staying closer to home at Northwestern. "You should go where you'll be happiest," Victor said. "Distance doesn't change family." "I know, but I also know I don't want to be too far away. You guys are annoying, but you're my annoying people." After dinner, after homework and bedtime stories and the familiar routines that made up their life, Alina stood in the doorway of each child's room and watched them sleep. These beautiful, brave children who'd let her into their hearts, who taught her that love didn't have to hurt, that family was about choice as much as blood, that broken things could become stronger in the mending. She found Victor in their bedroom, already in bed, reading a book and looking deliciously domestic. 3 years, she said, climbing in beside him. "It's been 3 years since you found me. Best decision I ever made. Stopping on that street? Offering you my hand." Victor set his book aside and pulled her close. "Everything good in my life now traces back to that moment. You gave me my children back. gave me hope, gave me love I thought I'd never have again. We gave each other those things, Alina corrected. That's how family works. They lay in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of the house settling around them. Somewhere down the hall, one of the children was still awake, probably Marco, working on some project. The security system beeped as guards changed shifts, life continuing, safe and warm and impossibly precious. I'm happy, Alina said suddenly. Really, truly happy. I didn't think I'd ever be able to say that. Say it as many times as you want. You've earned it. And she had. Through survival and courage and the willingness to accept love when it was offered. Through choosing to live when dying would have been easier. Through believing, against all evidence to the contrary, that she deserved good things. Years later, when Sofia graduated from high school and Marco from college, and Isabella became a lawyer who specialized in helping domestic violence survivors, they would all tell versions of the same story, about a woman who'd been left with nothing and built everything, about a family formed not by blood but by choice, about strength that comes from surviving the unsurvivable. But that night, 3 years after a frozen sidewalk and a stranger's hand and a choice to live, Alina simply held her husband and thought about how far she'd come. From broken to whole. From victim to survivor to warrior. From alone to beloved. She'd lost everything and found herself. Found her strength. Found her family. Found home. And that, she thought, as she drifted off to sleep wrapped in Victor's arms and surrounded by the sounds of her children breathing safely down the hall, was the best kind of happy ending. The kind you earned. The kind you fought for. The kind you chose. The kind that was really just the beginning.